emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus. You have accessed entry 987.RU0310. Certificate number 52488. The Princeton Incident. Princeton.
The Princeton Incident. My family was in New York a couple weeks ago for spring break.
Famous spring break location. You went to the beaches of New York.
We're in Midtown. It's a pretty typical Jennings trip to Manhattan. We saw a few shows. We ate some pastrami.
Do you go to like big Broadway productions of the Phantom of the Opera and stuff? Or do you go to like black box shows where somebody screams about their childhood?
Yeah, I just like to see maybe people splashing paint on nude bodies.
Yeah.
So we go to a lot of that.
But it's a musical.
And it's Wicked, weirdly.
A version of Wicked.
We're generally a little musical averse. I mean, at least me and Mindy, you know, our theater kid less so. But in this case, we ended up seeing a lot of musicals. Years ago, like before the pandemic, when they announced that Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster were going to do The Music Man, I thought to myself,
what a nightmare.
I thought to myself, keep me. No, I love The Music Man. And these are the two great American
Hugh Jackman,
song and dance performers of their generation.
Hugh Jackman, not an American.
Oh, that's true. The two greatest Australian or American song and dance people of our time.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I really love his singing and dancing.
Have you ever seen him? He's great.
Is he?
I don't love his voice, honestly. I don't love his voice.
What are the other musicals he's done that I might have seen him in?
Boy from Oz was his big Broadway thing. He did some kind of review of, who was the composer? No, I can't remember. He sings in Les Mis, the movie. He sings in The Greatest Showman. He sings in movies sometimes. He's an old-timey tap dancey guy.
I see.
You just think that he's Wolverine. And then right around the same time, they announced that they were going to bring over this West End reimagining of Stephen Sondheim's Company with a gender swap.
Right on.
It's a 70s thing about a commitment phobic guy in his 30s. And now it's a lot more interesting and relevant if it's like a commitment phobic woman.
When are they going to do The Odd Couple, but
gender swapped?
Gender swapped.
They already have.
Oh, where was I? Not going to any Broadway shows.
The Odd Couple has been gender swapped as early as the 70s,
okay.
I want to say.
Okay.
I can't remember who first played it.
Cagney and Lacey.
Yeah, it was Tyne Daly and Sharon Glass for 100% sure. Who's the messy one? Sharon Glass, right?
Yeah.
Cagney's
sure.
the messy one?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, hey, if those two are ever in New York at the same time, we should go see both. And it took 3 years because of the pandemic, but those were both showing this spring.
And you went to both.
And the kids were off school. We went to both. We saw the new Tracy Letts play.
I've only been to one Broadway show
in your
my entire life.
I'm going to guess. It was Cats.
No.
It wasn't a musical?
It was the Phantom of the Opera. I was in New York. I was dating a gal that grew up going to Broadway musicals. It was what her family did. They went to all of them, and they went to all of them multiple times.
Were they Manhattanites, or did they come in from Westchester to see the new Neil Simon?
No, they lived in in Holland and then in Belgium and then in Paris.
They would fly across the ocean to see musicals.
They would fly across the ocean to see musicals because that was what they loved. And they saw musicals, like every musical. She's seen Cats 8 times. I think that they were crazy.
If you're rich, you can be crazy.
Rich and crazy. And so she couldn't believe I'd never seen a musical. And we were in New York on a separate cover. And she said, well, let's just go over and see the Phantom of the Opera. And I went.
That's not the way to convert you.
And it was terrible. I couldn't believe how terrible it was. Although it had one memorable song. But I just couldn't. And then I walked out of the theater. You know, walking in, I was like, here it is. Broadway. This is it.
It's got a chandelier that falls.
I'm going to see what it's all about. I'm finally going to see what it's all about. And I came out and I looked around at all the other theaters showing all those other shows. And I was like, is it all as bad as this? Oh, this is really bad.
I hope you didn't tell that to Sonia or whatever her name is.
No, I said, wow, that was amazing. And she was like, well, you kind of had to be a kid. I'm like, I don't know. I didn't see any kids in there. These are all grown-ups that go to this. Did you go see the Book of Mormon?
I've seen Book of Mormon.
Is it good?
It's very funny. I mean, it's not the songs are incredibly catchy. I love those Robert Lopez songs. I mean, it's in very bad taste.
Yeah.
If you're African, you're not going to like it.
Oh.
Really, Africans come off worse than Mormons, honestly.
Did you see Springtime for Hitler? What was that? That movie was, that play was called something else.
The Producers.
The Producers. Did you see it?
I have not seen The Producers.
Oh, that seems like a thing you would have seen.
Yeah, a lot of those things that ran forever in the 90s to early 2000s, I did not see.
Rent?
Not see. I've only been going to, I mean, how recently have I been going to New York regularly? Only like 15 years tops.
Did you see Rent?
No.
Have you ever seen Moominshans?
I saw Moominshans on the
Muppet Show.
On the Muppet Show. Does that count?
No. I
saw Rent on the Muppet Show too.
Did you see the Blue Man Group? Have you seen any of this stuff?
I have you can go to actual theater. You don't just have to go to whatever has the most ads in the subway or on that channel in your hotel room.
Look, I've been to lots of plays. Don't get me wrong. It's just nobody sang.
I would generally we don't go to as many musicals but this time we went to those, and then my kid wanted to see, what else did we see?
Side by Sondheim.
Not playing right now. I wish it had been Side by Sondheim, because instead it was oh boy, why can I not remember?
All That Jazz.
At least this is the kind of thing where nobody in the audience is like yelling out the right answer unless they saw me at the theater.
Wait a minute. Was it Spider-Man? Did you go to see the Spider-Man Broadway show?
Yes, I was in New York 8 years ago and I saw the troubled production of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. No, we went to whatever kid forward one, and Dear Evan Hansen. No, it was
Mighty Mouse.
The musical. There have been musicals based on both Superman and Captain America, I believe.
One time in Seattle, I never saw Miss Saigon, although it played here for a long time, but there was a Bronson Pinchot vehicle.
What was he doing?
He was doing some kind of review, but it was a show.
But it was just to showcase his abilities. It wasn't just like we're reviving. It
felt like a Rodgers and Hammerstein review.
Mm-hmm. I think you would react better to just some revival of some 50s era thing. If I were going to try to get you to go to the theater, I would take you to some revival of Pal Joey or something, and you'd probably be much happier than watching one of these 80s spectacles. Six. We went to Six. Do you know what Six is?
No.
It's a reimagine. The characters are all the six wives of Henry VIII, but it's as if they're in a Spice Girls style girl group, a pop group. So they're six sassy songstresses, and the score is really good.
I did go to see Mark Morris's version of the Nutcracker, which was called The Hard Nut.
It's not a musical.
Is it not? There's music. Is it an opera?
Isn't it dance?
Oh, it's a ballet.
Does anybody sing? No.
He wrote an autobiography, and I interviewed him about his book at town hall.
And so you had to go to this thing.
And so he was in town, but they were doing the hard nut, and I was interviewing him the next night, and it was like, oh, I'll go to this. So I took my little girl, and it was more than she was prepared for. And then it turned out, Mark Morris was actually in the cast, but
he was dancing.
Well, he didn't do as much dancing anymore. He's sort of transitioned out of dancing. But yeah, it was kind of a lot. It was a lot for me.
The reason I mentioned our trip to New York was not to compare notes on Music Man.
I thought that's what the show was about.
Yeah, this is what the show is about now.
Okay.
But it's about to take a hairpin turn.
Okay.
So if you've been looking at your watch,
Scream!
wondering when we were going to stop talking about the Music Man or Cats, we happened to have some friends who happened to be in New York at the same time. And furthermore, they happened to have relatives who owned a place in the Hamptons.
Oh.
And furthermore, nobody was going to be at this family beach house in the Hamptons.
Wow. Was it in East Egg by any chance?
So East and West Egg are more like Great Neck up like at the top of Long Island, like closer to the city. The Hamptons, for those who are not from the eastern seaboard of the late 20th century, is on the far end of Long Island, kind of where the island splits into those two little
tails.
And on the southern coast, on the Atlantic Ocean, there are a series of beach towns which are historically especially in the last 50 years or so, are vacation getaways for New Yorkers and increasingly for very well-heeled New Yorkers.
Yeah, it's where those old shingled super mansions,
yes,
on the beach. What was the movie where they kept meeting in Montauk?
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless
That's
Mind.
right. Wonderful, wonderful film.
I went out to Montauk.
You did?
Went out to the lighthouse, found that the exact age of lighthouse docents is the exact age of people who want to talk to me about Jeopardy.
Yes, ma'am.
I also found, confusingly, that there was a whole bunch of lighthouse memorabilia there donated by Cheryl Teagues. There's a ton of historical lighthouseana on the walls there in the museum, and it all says, donated by Cheryl Teagues.
What?
Apparently at some point, she married some local guy in Montauk, and they had a collection of all this local Americana.
This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Why are we not doing a show on them?
Well, and she was only married to Peter Beard briefly. He kept living at Montauk and then died like in the early days of the pandemic. He had dementia for many years and just wandered out of his house and disappeared. And was found, I don't know, like months later in a ravine or something.
Whoa.
I mean, this was decades after he'd been married to Cheryl Teague, so therefore a little less of interest, perhaps.
But somehow she ended up with all the lighthouse memorabilia?
I wonder if she stayed out there as well. The whole place has been recently restored, and when you look at the list of the people who have paid to have it restored, it's you can see who hangs out in
Billy Joel.
It's Paul Simon, Lorne Michaels,
right?
Musical guest Billy Joel, David Geffen, Steven Spielberg. Like you can see who's pouring money into the Montauk Lighthouse.
There are a lot of names on that part of Long Island that even people, even listeners as far away as Tonga might recognize, like Sag Harbor, Fire Island, the famous gay beach resort.
Who in Tonga do you think knows about gay beach getaways?
Well, you might be surprised. 10% of Tongans probably.
Go to Tonga and yell about Palm Springs and see who's been.
Amityville is out there, well known.
Haunted house fame?
That's right, of the Amityville horror. And of course, it's where Gatsby famously fake lived.
Again, that's not near the Hamptons. Dylan was very jealous that we were going to the Hamptons because of his only frame of reference, which is the Seinfeld episode about shrinkage, is set in the Hamptons.
No, really?
It
is.
Well,
I guess.
And it turned out April was a great time to be there because we had some sunny days, but I guess in the summer it's just unnavigable now.
Because of all the tourists.
Yeah, traffic jams and everybody just lining up on the boardwalk for the saltwater taffy. You really can't go anywhere.
Shark attacks.
But in April, it was nice. It was, it was chilly, but, you could wander around. And we were driving through East Hampton at one point, and passed a cemetery. And I have a kid who's extremely cemetery prone. So we promised on the way back we'd stop at the cemetery. And we did. We hopped out.
Was P. Diddy there?
In the cemetery? Like his grave?
No, like he's walking around in a white linen suit, coming up with raps.
No. Do you think that's what he does in the Hamptons?
I don't know. Beats me. That's what I would do if I were famous and in the Hamptons.
Do you have like, is his umbrella man there next to him? Like
Just
sheltering
walking
him
around.
from the elements as he...
Just making raps about all the different gravestones.
What rhymes with mausoleum? Cause I'll see him?
I don't think that's a thing.
We were... So it's this kind of beautiful preserved part of East Hampton that still has a bunch of these old salt box homes that are, probably centuries old, and it's very much whatever the colonial Williamsburg of Long Island is. A big windmill called Gardener's Windmill.
Wouldn't have guessed.
Walked through the garden next door, saw a sundial that had been placed, apparently moved because now it was totally at the wrong angle and would never actually work as a sundial, but it was outside the Home Sweet Home Museum, which was dedicated to the author of the 19th century's most popular song. That's right. Home Sweet Home, not the Motley Crue one, by, what's his name? John Howard Payne or something like that. Yes, John Howard Payne. Do you know this song?
Yeah.
They played in cartoons when they're putting the baby to bed or something.
Right.
Anyway, the most popular song of the 19th century. It was written by this American for a Anglo-American operetta of some kind. During the Civil War, I think everybody got sniffly thinking about home and mother. And
I guess I was thinking about the Motley Crue song.
yeah, no, this is not the Motley Crue song. That was not the most popular. That was a popular song of the 19th century.
Not the 20th century either. I'm seeing here on the map that the Jackson Pollock Lee Krasner house, where they threw paint on the floor, is out.
Is that right there in East
that a
Hampton?
ways? Well, it's sort of up on one of those polyps.
Now that I look at it now, I see that John Howard Payne actually, that was not his house, this museum. In fact, he didn't have a house. Despite famously writing Home Sweet Home, he was a wanderer as a traveling actor and then as an anthropologist of the Cherokee Nation.
What?
He spent a lot of time trying to keep the Trail of Tears from happening unsuccessfully, it turns out.
Well, it does seem like if you're going to have a sundial, it really has one job.
Don't point your sundial the wrong way. But this was apparently his grandparents' house where he had spent some of his childhood. He was such a big celebrity at the time,
He had to get out on Montauk to get away.
No, I'm just saying that he was sufficiently famous for them to be like, hey, this is where his grandpa lived. Let's turn it into a museum.
Oh.
Anyway, this is the historic homes of the earliest settlers. And as I was walking through the cemetery, again, a lot of these graves older than America, I noticed the biggest obelisk in the cemetery reads David Gardner, 1784 to 1844. And I started to put this together. Oh, Gardner's Windmill is across the way. Gardner's Island is nearby, which the Gardner family bought in 1639. I think is still one of the largest privately owned islands in the United States. That's because Lion Gardner, David Gardner's ancestor, was had founded the first settlement on Long Island, basically the first European settlement in what became the state of New York.
Was he Dutch?
No, I believe English. Does that mean the English actually got to New York State before the Dutch?
I think they were both contesting, but Gardner's Island's way out at the end, so maybe the Dutch didn't make it that far.
But what I'm saying is this Lion Gardner settlement was predated any Dutch settlement in the state of New York. Oh no, maybe that's wrong. Maybe it was the first English settlement, but not the first European. That might be right.
1639 would have been after the first Dutch.
Yeah. But his son David, not the one whose obelisk I saw, but an earlier David, became the first white baby born in the state of Connecticut.
That's something.
But not the last. Yeah, can you imagine the doctor's surprise? Ma'am, this is the first white baby born in the state of Connecticut. Is there something you want to tell us? But as I'm reading his giant obelisk, trying to figure out who is this guy that has, besides just a rich scion of a rich family, why does he have this giant obelisk? And the language I'm walking around the four sides of it, and the language is very interesting. It talks about how his death in February 1844 was the darkest day in the history of the Republic.
Germany.
And I'm thinking, who is this guy, and why was his death such a dark day in the history of America? And as I started,
sounds like he was a fun guy, and
everyone was super bummed.
Yeah,
everyone was super bummed. As I read up on it, I realized this was an episode in U.S. history that I was kind of vaguely familiar with, but I did not know the whole contours of it. So let me take you back, to the 1840s.
Let's set the Wayback Machine to the 1840s.
Let's set the Wayback Machine for the presidency of John Tyler.
One of the, I think, widely accepted greatest presidencies.
Yeah, I will open my wallet now and give you all the money with John Tyler's picture on it. John Tyler was called his accidency because no one expected him to become president. In fact, no one to this day is quite clear on how he even became vice president.
It was a thing where both parties wanted something and neither one could get it, and nobody was organized, and pretty soon John Tyler was the only one left standing, right?
It definitely was a case of factions in the Whig Party. He was running as William Henry Harrison's running mate for the Whig nomination in 1842. Harrison was a war hero for, the only thing you could be a war hero for back then, slaughtering a ton of native people.
Sure. You could be a war hero for slaughtering a bunch of English people still.
Yes, or pirates.
Pirates.
That was about it.
What were the other ones?
Children. Women and children.
French.
They would ask you, who would you like to slaughter if you want to run for president, sir? French or native people? And yeah, for whatever reason, perhaps because Tyler was from Virginia, or he was not one of the more, everybody else, all the other more likely candidates like Henry Clay or whatever had made the mistake of backing one Whig faction or the other. Whereas John Tyler had recently switched parties from the Democratic Party, back when the Democratic Republicans were the only party.
Right.
So he had recently switched over from the Democratic Party to the Whigs during the Jackson administration as a slave owner, as you might presume, a Virginia plantation owner of the time. I guess we shouldn't say a slave owner. Now we say an enslaver of people. I don't know the right way to say that.
Boy, I don't know. I didn't read that.
Sometimes people don't like to use slave as a noun.
Oh.
You want to say enslaved people, so it emphasizes their humanity and not the accidency of them being, put in chains.
I see. It seems like it was intentional putting them in chains. It feels less like an accident.
Oh, right. Sorry, I meant I didn't mean the happenstance. I meant the situation.
The situation, right.
The unfortunate misfortune. How about that?
This was an era where most American presidential politics and national politics was about compromising with southern states and trying to figure out a way to eliminate slavery without eliminating slavery, and to keep the southern states from rebelling by giving them everything they asked for and getting nothing in return. Yeah,
30 to 50 years of terrible tension that apparently in the end did nothing except prolong slavery.
Right. We should have fought that Civil War in 1790. Get it out of the way.
Should we have told them? I mean...
Who?
I mean...
The slaves? Yes. First thing.
The Founding Fathers.
The Founding Fathers.
If you guys could just manage to have a civil... I know you just had a revolution, but if you guys could just manage to have a civil war... I mean, for one thing, if you just go back and tell the North, they can just do a sneak attack.
Maybe we shouldn't have...
Pearl Harbor style Civil War.
We shouldn't have fought for a union at all. We should have had two countries, the North and the South, and then they could have fought an actual war, not a civil war, and the North would have wiped up the South with all of our industrial manufacturings.
The Tyler had become disillusioned with the Democrats over Andrew Jackson's more big government approach, founding a Bank of the United States and whatnot. He thought he felt he as a slave owning Southerner had been betrayed by his party.
Being disillusioned with the Democrats is a long American tradition.
So Tyler switches to the Whigs, somehow becomes William Henry Harrison's running mate, perhaps in order to allow for the rhyme Tippecanoe and Tyler too.
Yep.
Although when you think about it, any two-syllable last name would have done there.
Tippecanoe and Johnson too. It's
Tyler,
not as good.
Tyler. All you need is somebody whose name is
starts with T and is two syllables.
Is what is that? It's a trochee? No,
Tippecanoe and Tony too. Tippecanoe and...
Is that a trochee? A stressed syllable than an unstressed syllable?
That's a good question. Of the two of us, I'm the one that should probably know that, but I don't.
So you could have nominated any candidate with a trochaic surname, but they didn't. They nominated Senator John Tyler.
Tippecanoe and Ticonderoga too.
Too long.
It would still work, though.
And as a result, I think many of us, if you're a fan of American history, you know what's going to happen here. Vice presidency was an extremely low-stakes office back then. No vice president had ever acceded to the presidency, and for that reason, people have short imaginations, and they just assumed it would never happen.
Sure.
Unfortunately,
what are the chances?
Unfortunately, William Henry Harrison was inaugurated and died 30 days later.
Yeah, that was inauspicious.
The story about him dying because he gave a
long speech without a hat.
Lengthy speech without a hat at his inauguration seems to not be true, because the proximate cause of his death actually, it was pneumonia, but it seems that, I thought you were
going to say it was a bullet to the chest.
I have a secret theory. The magic bullet from Dealey Plaza heads north, goes back in time 120 years. No, he went for a walk. I guess he always took some constitutional in Washington, D.C. back then. You just go to the post office or whatever.
Yeah.
And he got caught in the rain without a coat and then got pneumonia. So it's pretty much the story you've heard, but it actually happened a couple weeks later.
Huh.
And
but who can tell where the pneumonia got started?
Exactly. Maybe it was...
It started 2 weeks before.
Maybe he was already his immune system was already troubled by his too lengthy speech on a freezing day.
I think that's right.
Anyway, suddenly John Tyler is president. This has never happened in the history of America, so it seems very illegitimate in kind of a Bush v. Gore kind of way.
Yeah, shouldn't we just undo this and have another election?
And the real problem is that Tyler opposes nearly all of his running mates' policies.
Because this was a time when this was part of the compromise. The president came from one party and the vice president another?
That had been changed by, I believe, the 12th Amendment.
Oh,
so that was already different. It wasn't no longer the electoral runner-up. It was a chosen running mate.
But he had made the switch to a new party.
Yeah, it just happened. In this case, it happened to be somebody who had recently been on the other side of the aisle and who didn't really agree with most of the policy aims of his running mate.
Right.
And that wouldn't have mattered if he were just a normal dopey vice president.
Yeah, he should have been the senator from West Virginia.
But yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what happens. There's a Whig Congress that was expecting to get everything it wanted from President Harrison. And now Tyler is vetoing his own party's legislation.
Oh, Tyler.
And so the Democrats hate him for walking out. The Whigs now hate him for blocking their agenda, mostly regarding the Bank of the United States. He is having a terrible, unproductive administration. Nobody in Washington, D.C. likes him. And the following year in September, his beloved wife, Letitia, mother of his 8 children, dies of a stroke.
Oh, what a bad month.
He's having an all-time annus horribilis for a U.S. president. And he has staked, by 1844, the year in which David Gardner's tombstone is set, he has staked the future of his presidency on something that is popular with both parties: territorial expansion.
Yeah.
You know what you could always win votes with? Pushing more indigenous people out of the way.
Manifest destiny.
Our man wants to annex Texas.
Oh, yeah, and you can go against the Mexicans. That's also popular in America.
The problem with that is America is not a naval power, and annexing Texas is only the kind of thing you can do if you're pretty sure you can hold your own against the Spains and the Frances and the Britons of the world.
Right, and they're all down there monkeying around anyway.
And so this is just a wag the dog scenario where, because he's electorally unpopular, he needs to pivot hard to hawkish foreign policy, and in particular, impressive naval armaments. 1840 is also the dawn of, well, not the dawn, but it's the early days of the steam age of ocean going,
right?
As we have discussed on the Omnibus before. I mean, the very first steam vessels would have been 20 or 30 years before by this point, but they were primitive. They were paddle wheel driven.
Weren't they still in 1840 paddle wheel?
In 1844, I think just in the last couple of years,
side paddle,
the very first systems, ships that actually had
propellers,
screw propellers powered by a steam engine were actually starting to hit the water.
Interesting.
And in this case, there is a new U.S. Navy warship called the Princeton that everyone in the Navy is very excited about. It's going to have it's a steam engine powered by anthracite coal, which is, a more effective furnace, burns more hotly, so it's a more effective engine. And crucially, for a naval vessel, for a warship, the engine is below the waterline. This is a whole new configuration, so less vulnerable to enemy fire.
Plus, it has a tattoo of a tiger on its butt.
All the sailors have tattoos of tigers on their butt.
So the steam engine being below the water also lowers the center of gravity, so it's less tippy canoe.
Yeah, you don't want a tippy canoe when you've got Tyler too.
And faster, able to leap capital T's with a single bound.
It's and it's got new armament. It's got these new 12-inch, 27,000-pound cannons called Peacemaker and Oregon, respectively. That's what you want to call your 27,000-pound cannon, the Peacemaker.
My twin boys are named Peacemaker and Oregon.
That if you live on a militia compound somewhere, you should definitely name your two wrestling blonde boys Peacemaker and Oregon. 100%. Although Oregon's a blue state now, so a little tricky.
Well, only the one sliver of it.
Only the sliver where everybody lives.
Anyone who's taken a motorcycle trip there in the last year or so will tell you.
My sister lives in Medford. I've seen it all.
Yeah.
Cannons are the brainchild of a Navy inventor named John Erickson, whose name may be familiar to you because he later becomes famous for
washing machines.
For inventing Erickson washing machines. No, for the ironclad ship the Monitor.
Oh, there he is.
During the Civil War. If you've ever, if you can maybe picture, there's a monument to John Erickson just south of the Lincoln Memorial, just right on the Potomac. It's kind of in the middle of a traffic circle there, kind of between the tidal basin and the Potomac. And if you've ever driven around that area looking for parking unsuccessfully, like I have a couple times,
yes,
you may have driven by John Erickson's monument in real European vacation style over and over.
I used to sit there at the monument because I was hoping to see Clinton jog by eating fried chicken out of a barrel.
Unfortunately, it was 2010, and he never showed.
No, it was 18. I'm sorry, not 18. It was 1989, and he wasn't there either.
Yeah, I don't think he really jogged as often as he wanted us to think he was.
It's just that one time.
He was just jogging to McDonald's.
But he jogged across that bridge, so that's where I looked for him.
Erickson has put these giant new cannons on the Princeton. Captain Robert Stockton of the Princeton is excited to show off the cannons, and Erickson is telling him they are not ready.
So they sail up the Potomac and he bombards Washington.
Sort of. He bombards Virginia. On the morning of February 28th, 1844, a pleasure cruise to demonstrate America's new naval power, personified by the USS Princeton, is planned on the Potomac River.
Okay.
There's a big VIP list. President Tyler himself is there with leaders of both parties. This is the thing that's going to revive his presidency. It's Infrastructure Week in Tyler's Washington. So there's fancy cocktails and canapes aboard. There's a brass band playing. The sun is sparkling on the river. It's a cold but beautiful day in late February.
They sail into the Gulf of Tonkin.
Wow. What a turn this has taken. It's a great Quantum Leap episode. The 400 guests come from, the best of the highest echelons of government and the highest ranks of DC society. The president's there, of course. Secretary of State Abel Upshur. That's a real
Abel Upshur.
Real
can confirm.
Familiar name. What do you say? When a name is super famous in American history, it's a what's the expression for this?
Famous name in American history.
That's it. That's what I'm thinking. Thomas Walker Gomer, the Secretary of the Navy, is there. 6 senators, including no less than Thomas Hart Benton, D. Missouri. Dolly Madison herself is there. I think in her 80s at this point, or pushing 80.
Yeah.
James Madison having died maybe 5 years before, she is now kind of the last surviving
of the old guard
tie to the founding fathers.
Yeah.
And she's a kind of a iconic figure in her own right, White House hostess, heroine of the War of 1812.
A real celeb.
Big name to have aboard. Currently running one of Washington's most prominent bordellos. No, that's not true. And then a bunch of just moneyed bigwigs from DC society, big lawyers, one of whom is David Gardner and his 2 daughters.
Okay.
His daughter, Julia, has recently come from, whatever the family home in Staten Island or Long Island is, to join her dad in DC and has immediately charmed the city's social set no end.
Oh, did she debutante? Did
Yes.
she debut?
She is a beautiful young woman. You know, if you look at a picture of Julia Gardiner with an eye, you'll see that, you know, even by our standards, she'd be a sparkling young woman, a great addition to any party. And
this is an era with the where the style was big curls, like head of curls with a ribbon. Yeah.
she's got kind of a tiara in the portrait I'm seeing. Of
Oh,
her
I see the
most
tiara.
often.
She does have that 1840s pose where her head is kind of tilted at an angle where if you see it once, it looks cute, but after you see it repeated 50 times, it seems a little bit.
It actually looks like her neck has just been broken in an Evil Dead movie.
Yeah,
you know,
it does.
it's like nothing has stopped the zombie.
She
She's
does
still coming at
seem
you.
a little bit like a zombie. Yeah. Wow, there's a doll of her. Go on.
I encourage our listeners to not Google Julia Gardner at this point because it will give away the rest of the story
Oh,
of this episode.
sorry. Did I just give it away?
No, I don't think you
Okay.
have. I don't think you have. It's up to the listener. So Captain Robert Stockton of the U.S. Navy is in full dress uniform at 11 a.m. when they pull out of the dock onto the Potomac with the band playing the Star Spangled Banner. That's how you know it's a party, right? When a marching band plays this, I guess they're not marching if they're on a ship. If
Wait,
a
the
naval
Star
band plays
Spangled
the Star
Banner
Spangled
wouldn't
Banner,
have been written yet.
no, it was
War of 1812.
War of
right,
1812. Yeah, so that's kind of funny. It's then a song about something that happened 32 years ago.
Right.
So for us, it would be like a song about 1990. It would be like "Faith" by George Michael. Plays as they pull out of dock. Now, keep in mind that Erickson has warned Captain Stockton that the guns are not ready for prime time. But Stockton is bragging about how these... Stockton is not listening. He has bragged about how amazing these guns are. And over Erickson's objections, he impresses the guests with 2 big volleys. They watch the cannonballs boom away. And in fact, they skip over the water. You can watch them skip like a stone 5 or 6 times.
That's cool.
As they head off into the distance. Everyone loves it. A good time is being had by all. It looks as if rehabilitation for the Tyler presidency is in the cards.
Skipping cannonballs will do it every time.
His approval rating just went up 1 point per skip.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody heads below decks for the food. That's where all the champagne is. Toasts to the Republic. Toasts to Tyler. Toasts to the charming women present. Ha ha ha.
Lots of sex in the style of the time.
Huge orgy is happening below decks. No, this is not like the Titanic with
right.
a bunch of Irishmen getting it on down below. This is DC society, John. No sex till 9 p.m.
What am I, a farmer?
John Tyler offers a toast to the Peacemaker and the Oregon. And then I think somebody else offers a toast to the third big gun here, President Tyler.
Hey!
And they all have a laugh.
Hip, hip.
Now, some of the guests want to see another firing as the Princeton passes Mount Vernon. It's suggested that
They fire upon George
to
Washington.
salute George Washington, there would be an
right.
insult to the memory of the father of his country if we didn't fire a lusty peacemaker salute toward Mount Vernon.
The future home of the Daughters of the Confederacy.
And that's how I like to be saluted. Like,
Boom!
my ghost will be unquiet unless you're constantly firing
Boom!
cannons at my family home.
Have you ever had a 6-gun salute?
No, I've been to a military funeral, so I guess I've heard. How many salutes at a veteran's funeral? 3? Does it depend on the rank?
No, it's what is it?
You have 3 gunmen firing a
3
few
times?
Is that right?
Let's get this right.
Let's just guess high because then it shows how much we support the troops.
A 40-gun salute. It's a 21-gun salute. How could I have forgotten
But wait,
that?
isn't that just for like the president?
No, it's the
All military funerals have a 21 gun
It's the
salute?
most common number of salutes.
Okay.
So 7 guns.
I think in this case it was 3 guns firing 7 times.
There it is. 3 guns firing 7 times.
I mean, the thing about 21 is there's no other divisors.
Right. 3,
You can't
7,
have 6 guns firing 3.5 times.
21 and 1.
You could have 21 guns firing once.
Yes. Can you imagine?
Or 1 gun firing 21 times, but you'd be there all day.
When I was King
P. Diddy's
Neptune,
in the cemetery just getting bored.
When I was King Neptune, I boarded many naval ships at invitation. I wasn't doing it as a pirate. And I really wanted to be piped aboard because when an officer comes on, you get that pipe, and they wouldn't do it. I was like, look, I'm the king. I'm King Neptune. I'm in a uniform that I made myself, and they refused. It's a small favor. I didn't want a 21-gun salute. I just wanted somebody hit the pipes.
Just find a Star Trek app that plays that sound.
I should have done.
And just use it on your phone. Woo. So as they pass Mount Vernon, Secretary of the Navy Gilmore tells Captain Stockton, "Hey, fire the Peacemaker again."
And he's like, "No, bro, I said it's not ready."
Well, Stockton's the one who was told by Erickson it's not ready, and Stockton says, "Well, the inventor is not crazy about firing again," and turns him down. But the Secretary of the Navy is telling him what to do, so he's forced to change his mind.
What do you have to do to a gun to make it ready? It's either ready or it's not, right?
I think it's a matter of possibly how it's mounted to the deck.
Okay.
I'm not sure what Erickson's objection was. It may just be that this is still a gun that has not actually been field tested.
Okay.
And so maybe you don't want to try it out on a boat full of dignitaries and partying debutantes.
Right, because it's made out of tangerines, which was an untested technology at the time.
I'm just saying you got a bunch of guys eating jellied eel and various aspics. And think how all that food is going to jiggle if something goes wrong with the gun.
That'll ruin a debutante's day.
The secretary, you don't want a jiggling debutante. Oh, maybe you do. Mm-hmm. The Secretary of State heads below decks to tell President Tyler, "Hey,
stop orgying.
Put your breeches back on, Mr. President." He says, "Hey, we're passing Mount Vernon, and we've talked Captain Stockton into firing the gun again, and that, you know how awesome that was." And Tyler's like, "Yeah, okay, I'll be right up." And as he's turning to head out of the hold, the band begins playing a patriotic song he loves. I don't know what the song, history does not record, but some song about the heroism of the spirit of 1776.
Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue.
It's Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue. No, it's just one of these songs that we don't have anymore about Valley Forge and the patriot dream that sees beyond the years. And
about somebody turning into a macaroni.
And Tyler's like, "Oh boy," like that is his jam. He was like, "I am not leaving the club as long as they are playing this song about the spirit of 76. So he does not, he tarries. And in particular, the charming women, Julia Gardner is there as well. Maybe that's one reason why he's happier to be below decks than up above. I'm not saying there was an orgy. I'm going to continue to repeat. The story has 0 orgies in it, like nearly all stories of the 1840s.
Well, almost no omnibus has an orgy. There are a few orgies, but it doesn't come up that often.
We've never had an orgy.
So you're saying
even the waterbed show didn't have an orgy.
What if the captain or the messenger had gone to the band leader and said, "We're about to fire the gun"?
Yeah, don't play that 1776 song that Tyler is so into.
But so Tyler's moonwalking across the dance floor,
and suddenly they all hear the big boom, and they, everybody below cheers because there's been another successful firing of the Peacemaker. They assume. Only seconds later to have a sailor come downstairs with his face blackened with soot, like cartoon Wile E. Coyote, to say, "There's been a terrible accident. You need to come above decks. Many are dead."
Whoa.
So suddenly everyone, that stops the party pretty quick. Oh. Everybody heads up to the deck.
How about pull on your breeches?
Bodies are strewn on the deck. Multi-ton pieces of metal have apparently flown off the cannon and its mounting.
The cannon itself didn't explode, but everything around it did? Or did the cannon explode?
I think maybe the barrel did. I would expect that the barrel exploded.
Did somebody put a cork in the end of the cannon? Because that'll do it.
The Peacemaker was not ready for prime time. I guess the barrel of the gun had burst.
Oh, boy.
So you get flames and heat and giant pieces of metal flying into a crowd full of, again, like the heads of American government.
Wow.
2 cabinet officers, 6 senators, and many are dead. In fact, Secretary of State Upshur lies dead on the deck. So does Secretary of the Navy Thomas Walker Gilmer. 2 of the wealthy... Captain Beverly Kennan is among the dead. That's back when nearly every strapping American sailor was named Beverly or something, mm-hmm. Florence or something. Mm-hmm. He was the head of some kind of a naval bureau. The Bureau of Construction and Repair.
Yeah. Well,
Wrong guy to die. If you're going to...
Well, he was there to celebrate the construction. He did not survive to see the repair, unfortunately. The president was safe below decks, luckily, but his valet Armistead, an enslaved person, a black slave, is dead.
Armistead?
Imagine a time, we know how many of the presidents had enslaved people, but imagine a time when, literally your body man in the Oval Office is a black slave, because that's what was going on in the Tyler administration.
Right.
Armistead has been killed. And then 2 wealthy attorneys, including, tragically, David Gardner, whose obelisk I saw in East Hampton. It is the worst.
His daughter survived.
It is, both daughters were below decks with the president. Probably not coincidentally. That's why he was there. That's where the pretty girls were. And he's a bachelor now. Now, this is the worst incident of its kind in American history. And that probably continues for, has there been any other day when 2 cabinet officers died in the same incident?
Trying to think.
Certainly the Lincoln assassination
was a bad day.
And there were attempts on Seward and maybe Andrew Johnston's life as well, I think.
Pearl Harbor was a bad day, but no cabinet officers died.
No. This was unprecedented, and it was the 9/11 of pre-Civil War America.
Well, that's one of my favorite conspiracy theories. No cabinet members died on 9/11.
Are there usually a bunch of cabinet members in the Windows of the World
well,
observation deck?
It just makes you think.
Yeah. 23-year-old Julia, the younger daughter of David Gardner, comes up on deck, sees her father is dead, and because it's 1844, swoons.
Of course.
Swoons into the arms of President Tyler, who, as they make for shore, ends up carrying her down the gangplank heroically. The president carrying a nubile swooning 23-year-old. She, in fact, in later retellings of the story, and this is contested because it seems unlikely, actually wakes up in his arms on the gangplank and, not knowing where she is, begins to struggle and nearly knocks the president into the Potomac.
Don't do that.
But
that's going to make the papers.
But this actually, in addition to being the 9/11 of the 1840s, is also the cutest Aaron Sorkin romantic moment of the 1840s. Because President Tyler has had his eye on young Julia ever since his wife died, even though she is, 30 years his junior? Apparently the fact that she's a beautiful 23-year-old does not dissuade him.
No, that was the style of the time.
What a surprising turn of events for a powerful man to be interested in a 23-year-old debutante at all the society balls.
We used to tie onions to our belt and marry women 30 years our junior.
Now, Julia has been, despite the fact that he's the president, she has been putting him off.
Right. He's 30 years her senior.
For a year or more. But that day, as he carries her down the gangplank with her father's body still on the deck and smoke still rising from the accident that's killed, 1/4 of the cabinet.
She realizes this is a meet cute.
Here is her actual quote. "After I lost my father, I felt differently toward the president. He seemed to fill the place and to be more agreeable in every way than any younger man was or could ever be." Now, I don't want to diagnose somebody who's been dead for well over a century with daddy issues.
Yeah.
But here is somebody who lost her rich, beloved father in a terrible accident and immediately starts dating a gaunt older man in a high collar in a position of political power. She's maybe replacing daddy.
Yeah, I suppose.
You don't buy it?
Well, no, you're absolutely right. 100%. This is a side plot in David Copperfield, which I'm reading right now.
Which, a younger wife?
Yeah, Dr. Strong is sort of an absent-minded professor, and he is married to a much younger woman named Annie. And everyone in the book suspects that Annie has a young lover, but it turns out, spoiler alert, if you haven't read it, turns out really she's devoted to him. And she says in her confessional soliloquy that she is that she loves him both as a lover and as a father.
Oh, that's what you That's what every man dreams of hearing.
And David Copperfield and this event here on the
deck of the Princeton.
On the deck of the Princeton, they're very contemporaneous.
When did Copperfield come out? Is it 1840s or 1850s?
It's the 1840s, right? David. Well, here's unfortunately, if you Google David Copperfield, you get the magician.
1840. That's also Claudia Schiffer had some daddy issues too. Let's be honest.
Right.
She wanted a guy with a nice big wand. May 1849. So yes, 5 years later. I think a funny idea for like an SNL audition character would be guy who just read David Copperfield and likes to compare things to David Copperfield.
Hey, that's me.
No matter what happens, you're like, well, you know what Mr. Macabre would say to that.
This is another example of a television show proposed by people that don't watch television.
David Copperfield guy. So a mere less than 4 months to the day after her father's death, President John Tyler marries Julia Gardner in secret.
Oh.
And then, he doesn't want to, a lot of eyebrows have already been raised about the age difference. He does not want gossip. A sitting president gets married for the first time in the nation's history, and maybe it's only happened 2 subsequent times, I want to say.
But wait,
Cleveland and Teddy?
He doesn't want there to be gossip, so he marries a young woman in secret? What a way to precipitate gossip.
Well, he just doesn't have a big ball or whatever. And then he announces, my fellow Americans.
By the way.
Why is he Obama? My fellow Americans. He announces that he's married a 23-year-old woman, and she becomes the first lady of the United States.
Right on. High five. Is she the youngest first lady?
23. The only possible...
This is such a Jeopardy
The only
question.
possible contender would be Frances Cleveland, who in an even ickier story was a daughter of a friend of Bachelor President Grover Cleveland, who he had known since she was a little girl, and he used to joke with her dad about how, boy, I can't wait till she's old enough for me to marry.
Uh-oh.
And then he did.
Ooh.
Let's see. She was born in 1864 and became first lady at the age of 29.
There you go. That.
Oh, no. I'm
that's
wrong.
Nice.
I'm wrong. That's his second term. She was first lady 2 non-consecutive times, of course.
Of course.
Her first time was 1886 when she was only 22. She was younger than Julia Gardner.
Whoa, 22.
There have been 2 first ladies who are like younger than
college
Gigi
seniors.
Hadid. Yeah, basically. That's crazy. Not recently, however.
Well, different times.
I mean, not that different. I mean, Melania Trump is also a much younger third wife.
Right, but much younger than her decrepit ancient husband.
Not 22. Julia Gardner's great gift to the nation is she was the one who liked the marching band tune Hail to the Chief.
Oh, I suddenly had this picture of her giving it a thumbs up emoji, like totally liked Hail to the Chief. Blink.
Yeah, if you like Hail to the Chief, don't forget to like and share on
subscribe.
Navy #NavyBand.
So she liked the song.
And she insisted it always be played at receptions when she and her husband entered, and that became an American tradition.
I mean, if you write a song called Hail to the Chief, you're hoping that happens.
Yeah, I mean, what if only a police chief likes it? I mean, it could be like a cool chief could like it, like Crazy Horse.
Yeah, but it's not like she said, boy, 3 is the magic number is such a great tune.
You got to always play 3 is the magic number when we come in the room. I mean, maybe it was the 3 is the magic number of her...
Hail to the Chief.
Of her time, yeah. You know, as you would expect, her husband died long before her. John Tyler did not go on to have a great administration full of accomplishments. He was not successful in seeking the 1844 presidential nomination. As abolitionism became more of a serious movement in America, he became more and more disturbed. You know, he was one of these guys who never actually defended slavery in any way, except by having slaves. I have a ton of slaves, and boy, it would sure be inconvenient if they were freed. Which I guess is a pretty good representation for a lot of liberal beliefs today. Like this is this is clearly an injustice, but if I speak out against it,
Yeah, at the same time,
nobody paid off my student loans.
My house is worth $1 million too. I'm not really into it.
I don't think property taxes should go up the more I think about it.
Do you want to know the most hilarious thing? About 10 years ago, maybe, I was casting around looking for something to read. I don't know what I was in the bathroom somewhere, and I had this extremely thick biography of John Tyler.
Why?
I had a friend that worked at Amazon in the early days, and they used to get
all the books.
Yeah, they did. They had,
and at the very bottom of the list was this biography of John Tyler.
Whatever this person's job was, they had all of the paper copy, advanced copy books. And every time some, new book about Churchill came in, they would throw it in a box and give it to me. All the stuff that they figured nobody else wanted. And this John Tyler book was in there, along with, 70 books about, 70 books about other things that were even less interesting, 30 Years' War. And I was like, I'll read this 800-page book about John Tyler. And I read it and retained almost nothing. I think the subtitle of the book was "A President that you can say very little about," but here's 800 pages on it. And honestly,
well, he's a more interesting figure later in life because, as his reaction to the abolitionist movement was to become increasingly pro-Southern, to the degree that he and Julia were great friends with Jefferson and Varina Davis. And when Civil War broke out, he rode south. He had been elected, I think, to the Confederate legislature, and an ex-president. This is a real feather in the Confederacy's cap. They have an ex-president serving in their government.
There you go. But kind of a bummer, like we were talking about earlier today. If you're in a successful band, do you go play bass in some dumb band? No, you have a little dignity, right?
He actually died en route to Richmond. He was on a horse down to join the Confederacy when he was felled by a stroke.
Lol.
The hand of God, apparently. Julia Tyler spent the rest of the war living in, this ex-first lady. There was no Secret Service protection, of course, but she had her family money, so she was living in a very nice Staten Island mansion from which she basically operated a kind of pro-Confederate Bund, like a kind of a fifth columnist organization, not outright espionage, but definitely, how do we get better treatment for Southern prisoners? What peace efforts can we do that kind of weaken the North? At one point, rowdies came into the house and found a Confederate banner and burned it.
Oh, yeah.
And she had to protest to the paper that, it was merely decorative.
Sure, we just have the Nazi flag as a joke. Didn't John Tyler famously, when he was dying, he said, "I'm dying," and somebody was like, "No, I hope not," and he said, "No, perhaps it's for the best." Weren't those his famous last words?
Is that true?
I remember it. Perhaps it's for the best, and then died.
You were in the bathroom. You were in the bathroom a long time. If you actually got to the.
I read the whole thing.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Perhaps it was the best.
The doctor said, "I hope not, sir." Tyler then said, "Perhaps." Maybe he had a moment of clarity about his life as a plantation owner.
Maybe it's best. I'm on my way to join the Confederacy. Perhaps it's best.
The interesting thing about this May-December romance between John and Julia is she was able to bear him 10 more children, bringing his legitimate lifetime total to 18.
What?
A record for any president.
How long were they married?
He died in 1862. They were married 18 more years.
And she had 10 children.
And she had a child, almost all of them. Almost every one of those years brought a new child.
Wow.
Maybe there were multiples. I'm not sure.
It's analogous to Charles Dickens, whose wife also...
Oh, that classic character is that guy who just read David Copperfield. Let's see what he would say in this situation.
She was pregnant almost every year of her marriage. She was pregnant at some point.
But always with the same baby.
It was the same baby.
She was like an elephant.
It wouldn't come out.
She was pregnant for a decade. Well, the implication, this is maybe the thing that people know. We have a friend, by the way, who's descended from John Tyler.
I did not know that.
Have you ever seen those two little pistols that Maria Semple has in their front room?
She did.
Yeah. Novelist Maria Semple is a descendant of
And those are
John Tyler.
Tyler's pistols.
Apparently, yes. That's her family legacy. But here's the interesting thing, and this is the trivia, that if you know anything about John Tyler, you've probably seen this because it's on NPR twice a week.
I'm remembering a time when I was at her house and she showed me the John Tyler pistols, and I said I had read a John Tyler biography. This is 15 years ago.
This has come up twice in your life now.
Wow.
That biography has really paid off for you.
But the thing is, I had even forgotten that.
So do you remember this thing about John Tyler, that because he was having kids into his... Let's see. He was born
70s, right, or 60s?
Yeah, 60s or 70s. He also had one of those 18 kids also married a younger woman. John Tyler, despite having been born in 1790, has one living grandchild.
I did know this. Even still living?
Yes, there were two as early as the pandemic.
Right.
And then one of them made headlines by dying in 2020, not of COVID, I believe, but of being extremely old. That's what the birth certificate said.
Grandchild.
John Tyler has a grandchild. Harrison Ruffin Tyler is in a Virginia nursing home, and I don't think he's super aware that he's in a Virginia nursing home.
Yeah, right.
But he is a grandchild of a U.S. president born in 1790.
Wow.
What is that? 150 years after his grandparents' enslaved people were freed.
Isn't that incredible?
So that's what happens when you have a meet cute on 9/11 is you produce another 150 years of posterity.
Can I redirect us just for a second to the obelisk?
Yes.
Tell me more about the obelisk.
Well, it opened and 6 different kinds of light came out. No.
And it spun around.
You know how there was a time when Egyptian iconography was super popular in the West and Europe, especially in cemeteries. It was kind of a post-Napoleon thing, I think.
Yes, the keymaster told me all about it.
And that's why the Washington Monument is what it is. Yes. A lot of graves from that period look like little Washington monuments.
We even have them here in our own Lakeview Cemetery.
The one on Capitol Hill, right?
Yeah, some obelisks.
You can definitely tell that's a mid-19th century thing.
But so she went back and built the obelisk for her father, or the obelisk came with him? Is he in the obelisk?
He is standing up inside the obelisk. No, he just turned out to be one of the most wealthiest, prestigious New York and DC lawyer from one of the great old families of the Northeast. And by the time he was buried, I mean, if the monument was added then, his daughter would not have been first lady. But if the monument even came 6 months later, his daughter would have been the sitting first lady of the United States of America.
Yes.
So I think there's a reason why he's the biggest name in the cemetery. He was the guy where if he hadn't taken a 1,000-ton piece of iron to the head, John Tyler would not have had 10 more kids.
Well, and also they owned that giant island right off the coast there.
That's the consolation prize. Either you die with a piece of iron to the head, or you live long enough to see yourself own the biggest privately owned island in America.
And that concludes the Princeton incident. The Princeton incident.
Princeton incident.
Entry 987.RU0310. Certificate number 52488 in the omnibus. Futurelings, in the unlikely event that social media still exists in your era, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are archived at Omnibus Project. Our handles were at Ken Jennings and at John Roderick. I wish I were still on Twitter because I would be tweeting about David Copperfield every darn day.
There should be a social media platform just for Dickens tweets.
Yes, I bet there are a lot.
I'm going to go to Heap.
UriahHeap.com.
I'm sending out some of my heaps.
UriahHeap.org. Hashtag Heap. You can email us at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. You can hang out with other Futurelings on the Futurelings various fan sites.
Discords and discourses alike.
You can mail us things. If you have a set of John Tyler's pistols,
matching ivory-handled pistols,
that you believe are more authentically John Tyler's than Maria Semple.
If you have reason to know that Where'd You Go, Bernadette author Maria Semple has a pair of counterfeit pistols, we would like the real ones.
Send them to P.O. Box.
Because we want to do some crimes and frame her.
Oh, I know. Do some crimes and frame John Tyler's grandson.
He has a pretty good alibi.
He's in a nursing home, but at night.
His alibi is he's not eaten solid food since the first Bush administration.
He sneaks out, puts on a costume.
Cat burglar.
People think he's old.
He's a cat burglar.
P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington, 98155. Usually Ken brings a box of mail, but this time he
I can open mail.
No. Don't bother.
I've got this right here. Do you want me to do it on the next show?
Yeah, well, no, do it now. What is it?
What do we got? I don't know. It's from Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
Oh, this is tricky. There's an envelope that says Ken,
It's tricky.
and then it says, Hi, John.
Oh, boy.
I don't know. Does that mean it's not to you or it is to you?
No, it's not to me. It's to Ken.
It's cheese puns. It says, you're one of the Gouda ones. And then the other cheese, which is neither a cheddar nor a Gouda, says, you cheddar believe it. It looks to me like there's one of them is a Gouda, and then the other one is just a brie or a camembert.
It's a brie, yeah.
It's a little confusing. Shouldn't it be you better brie leave it?
There you go.
I've got
you
some
should be making greeting cards with cheese puns.
Oh, Jennifer is a frequent correspondent. She's the one who made the crocheted toilet paper dolls, baby Yodas, and the Lego minifigure head.
I still have all of those.
I have all of those things too. I was looking at one of them yesterday, and confusingly, she sent us 3 $2 bills and a Pueblo, Colorado consumer information catalog from spring 1989.
Very nice. Sending us 3 $2 bills is like going to dim sum where there are 3 shumai.
I hate when any appetizer plate has 3 of the item.
What are you talking about? There are not 3.
How are we going to split these bao?
You can count how many of us are at the table.
Here, I'm going to list some of these publications from Pueblo, Colorado, and you tell me if you want it or not.
Okay.
Would you like the nutritional gender gap at the dinner table? How men and women differ in nutritional needs.
I believe I would read that.
Facing surgery? Why not get a second opinion?
No.
The colon.
Sure.
While this part of the body is not generally discussed, it performs important functions. Look, we all know.
We talk about it all the time here on the show.
Yeah, we're 50-year-old men. Removal of radon from household water. You can't afford not to get that one. It's only 50 cents.
I guess so. Why is Pueblo, Colorado the place again? We should do an omnibus on that.
We have talked about this before, and I think we will do an omnibus on Pueblo, Colorado. Although anybody younger than us it's not an iconic thing.
It used to be a thing.
TV
like
commercials.
so much of what we talk about, it used to be a thing.
Shall you and I each keep a Thomas Jefferson $2 bill, speaking of enslaved people, and then send one to Mark Miles?
Oh, good idea.
Or what if I give you 2, I keep 1, and I keep the consumer information catalog?
Okay.
I drive a hard bargain. Mark Miles is listening now to the negotiation that ended with him not getting a $2 bill.
Sorry, Mark Miles.
You can
Better luck next time.
You can invoice us.
The other thing that I normally say here in the outro is please support the show. In this case, we got $6 and a catalog.
Send us weird denominations of bills, or
support the show directly at patreon.com/omnibus project.
Listeners, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. We have no idea what other romantic ways that future presidents met their first ladies.
Do you think, what are the chances in this universe or any other that you and I die as a result of a cannon explosion?
It seems low. Like, what are we touring a recreation of the Golden Hind? Like, what is the...
Where would, let's say an infinite number of multiverses.
Well, you're King Neptune.
Right.
Let's say you've been invited to some kind of pirate, nautical themed festivity.
But I'm saying you and I both killed in a single cannon explosion.
Well, that's more likely. It's way more likely than you and I being killed in 2 separate cannon explosions.
True.
Right?
True. We would go to a thing. Maybe I would be King Neptune. I'd invite you along.
If you and I do die in a massive cannon explosion, I just hope that there's some other horny politician nearby who is able to carry a swooning damsel away and seal the deal.
Maybe there's a alternate universe where you were killed in a cannon explosion and I'm the horny politician that carries away a damsel.
That's what you want. Everybody gets what they want. I get to die in glory. You get a damsel, a swooning damsel. We hope and pray that, unlike the Princeton incident, the catastrophe that ends all life on Earth may never come. But if the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may be our final word. But if Providence allows, if we dodge all the cannons, we will be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.